Israel and Iran are staring each other down tonight across the expanse of Syria. Long simmering hostility flared to life last night as the Israelis blasted Iranian fighters in Syria with their largest airstrike since the 1973 war. Israel says the Iranians started it with a rocket barrage. Special correspondent Jane Ferguson reports from Jerusalem.
The bright dots and streaks in the sky, as shown in Syrian night vision and television video, tell the story of an overnight Mideast confrontation. The pictures purportedly show Israeli airstrikes against Iranian military targets. Damascus also claims they show Syrian air defenses intercepting those Israeli missiles. A spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces said today they struck dozens of Iranian targets, not just around Damascus, but throughout the southern part of Syria. The Israeli military said the overnight operation was a response to rockets that they say Iranian forces fired first at Israeli military positions in the Golan Heights. The Israelis said most of the Iranian rockets either missed their mark or were intercepted. Israel's defense minister Avigdor Lieberman lauded his country's operation and put Iran on notice.
We, of course, struck almost all the Iranian infrastructure in Syria, and they need to remember this arrogance of theirs. If we get rain, they'll get a flood. I hope that we ended this chapter and that everyone understood.
In Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Iran crossed a red line, and he warned Syrian President Bashar al-Assad as well.
We are in a continuous campaign, and our policy is clear. We will not allow Iran to establish itself militarily in Syria. Yesterday, I delivered a clear message to Assad. Our action is directed against Iranian targets in Syria. But if the Syrian army acts against us, we will act against it. Whoever attacks us, we will attack them sevenfold, and whoever prepares to attack us, we will act against them first.
A Syrian military spokesman, however, disputed that Israel's offensive was a success.
Syrian anti-aircraft defenses earlier this morning destroyed the largest part of a successive wave of Israeli rockets fired at its army bases.
In Washington, a White House statement left no doubt where the Trump administration stands. It condemned the Iranian rocket attack on the Golan Heights as provocative and supported the Israeli attack as self-defense.
Iran had vowed to respond to Israeli military strikes on Syria, but hadn't said when it would do so. Of course, what happened overnight came less than 2 days after the U.S. announced it was pulling out of Iran's nuclear deal with world powers, a step welcomed here in Israel amid hardening battle lines in the region.
Other world leaders spent today trying to lower tensions. French President Emmanuel Macron.
There is a risk of escalation and growing tensions. We must be very vigilant to avoid that.
That was also the line from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
As for escalation between Israel and Iran, we think it is a rather disturbing trend. We believe that all the problems should be solved through a dialogue, and many times in contacts with the leadership of Iran and Israel. We emphasized the need to avoid any actions which would be mutually, so to say, provoking.
And there was even firmer language from the United Nations, which called for the two sides to stop.
The Secretary General urges for an immediate halt to all hostile acts and any provocative actions to avoid a new conflagration in the region already embroiled in terrible conflicts with immense suffering for civilians.
In the Golan today, there was little sign of conflict, but tensions remain high. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jane Ferguson in Jerusalem.
And we'll have a discussion of what the Israeli-Iranian clashes could mean after the news summary.